Hi everybody, welcome to YSCom Driving and welcome to my Volkswagen collection. I didn't know I had all these cars, but over the years as a media I've been collecting these cars and sometimes I buy them when I see them, and let's just take a quick look. One of my favorites of course is this common gear. This is 143 scale and this is a beautiful very nicely detailed common gear. I never had a chance to drive one, but I'm hoping one day I'll get one. Then we have here a Passat. This is an older model. This may be the 6th or 7th generation. Then we have a Volkswagen Charan. You don't see it here anymore, but this is one of the best MPVs you can have. Then on this side I have, this is a limited edition. This is the Volkswagen Type 11. It's got a lot of little windows. It's a combi. It's in the box, and so I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to take it out, but you can see the picture. Yeah, you can see the picture on this camera. All right. Then we have this is quite a cheap one. Cost maybe about 20 ringgit. This is a little Beetle. I have another one, red one in a box, but I'm not going to take that one because that one is exactly the same as this. This is the yellow one which I found in Thailand, and this is another one I found in Thailand. This is a bigger version of the common gear. Okay, so it has this roll back action. You roll it back, it moves forward. Okay, so this is a common gear, quite hard to find, and this is the Passat CC. So this one is 143 scale again. This is the Passat CC where it has got a more sloping back, and this one has got a 2-liter engine. And then over here, this is very hard to find. This is the Polo, Volkswagen Polo, and also 143 scale. And this one I found recently. It is a Golf Mark II. This is a very old model, but somehow I managed to find one, and I think it's going to be difficult to find later on. So actually we have 4 Volkswagens in the house. We have a Polo GTi, which is based on this body, but it's a 2-door. Then we have a Jetta, which we don't have here, and we have a Golf TSI, which is the Mark 6 Golf 2010 model, and we have a Golf R 2015. So that's 4 Volkswagens in the house. Of course, it's driven by different people in the house, but it's in the same family. And what I like about the Volkswagens, in fact, since I drove the first Mark 5 GTi way back in 2006 or 5, and I drove to Penang, it was a wonderful drive, and I had my first experience of the DSG, and that was the time I said this is the future of gearboxes. I remember writing it in my article when I wrote it for a magazine, and that was a lovely car. And of course, I used it up to the max, and by the time we got to Penang, the fuel was empty. Yeah, so we used up a lot of fuel, but I enjoyed the car. Now, the car can also be very economical, so don't think that all Volkswagens drink fuel. They can be economical depending on what you want it to be. So what I like about the Volkswagen is the DSG gearbox, and we need to understand a little bit about how it works in order to understand how to maintain it. There's been some issues, especially with the first batch of DSG in the dry clutch, which was around 2010, which started around 2009, and then there was a batch in 2011 to 2012 that had some problems with gearbox, but those have been resolved. So even now there are people who are worried about the gearbox. But let me just tell you something, it's 2020, and if you think, do you think that Volkswagen wouldn't have stopped using the DSG if they couldn't solve the problem? And would you think that other brands like Audi, Porsche, which belong to the same group, Skoda, and of course the other brands like Mercedes, they're using dual clutch transmissions now, and so are some of the Japanese makes, and BMW also runs dual clutch transmissions now. So therefore, if the issues were not solvable, then everybody would have dropped it like a hot potato. But as it is now, more and more people are using, or more and more car makers are making the using the DCTs. And so of course Volkswagen is also in the forefront in developing the dual clutch transmission, and they call theirs the DSG. Now, what is so good about the DSG? Why do I love the DSG? Yes, I love the DSG. Why? Because the gear changes are so fast, okay, and so smooth. You can see from some of our videos that we are running, when the car is accelerating, it just goes and goes and goes. You know, you use the pedal shift, it just goes. And another thing about the DCT is, or DSG, is that there is no transmission slip. Basically, guys, it is a manual transmission, but it behaves like an automatic. So the thing you must imagine is you have a lot of little men sitting in the gearbox waiting for you. Okay, when you are driving, it says, hey, the guy wants to go to the next gear, so he gets ready. Okay, it's time. It changes gear. So a little man down there changes the gear for you without you having to think. It predicts what you want. Okay, and when you want to shift down, it says, hey, he wants to shift down, so it shifts down one gear for you. And the thing is, because there's no torque converter, there is no slip. Okay, of course, some of the newer automatic transmissions also have lock-up clutches and all, so they are pretty good also. Okay, but nothing beats the DSG in terms of changing speed, and also in terms of smoothness, and in terms of transmission loss. Okay, so therefore the DSG gives you better efficiency, and if you want to, you can get very good fuel economy. Okay, so let's go to our classroom and see what the difference is between automatic transmission and a DSG. Okay, so here's how the transmissions work. Yeah, now in an ordinary transmission, let's just draw. Okay, this is an engine, E, let's call it E. Okay, the engine, and this is the fan in front of the engine. Then behind or next to the engine, you'll have the transmission. This is called the transmission. Okay, automatic transmission. Let's call it AT. Yeah. Okay, and then from the transmission, you get the gears 1 to 6, or maybe up to 8-speed gearbox, and then it drives the wheels. Okay, these are the wheels. So from the engine, in a normal transmission, you have a clutch, okay, and a manual, and that will connect the engine and the transmission if it's a manual transmission together. And when the engine turns, it's locked to the gearbox, and then the gearbox with the gear ratios will drive the wheels through a final drive here. So that's a very simple picture of how the transmission works. Now, for automatic transmission, they don't have a clutch. They will have a torque converter, and this is where the torque converter is. And when it's joined, it joins up to the transmission and to the wheels, so it becomes one unit. And what happens is, when the car is stationary, that means, and your gear is engaged, the wheel will stop, the transmission will stop, but the engine doesn't stop. So what does a torque converter do in a normal transmission? Now here's how the torque converter works. Imagine a fan that is pushed by the engine. So this is a fan, okay, and it's turning around like that. This is the end view. So what happens is, the fan blows in this direction, and you get, in a normal fan, you get air blowing this way. So if you took two fans, two standing fans, and put them facing each other, this one is another fan, then what will happen is, as you turn, this fan turns, the air moving here will cause this fan to turn. Correct? So you can call it sympathetic revolution. Okay, The only difference in the torque converter is it's encased in a casing. Of course, this is from the engine, yeah? Engine here. The engine turns the fan. Only thing is, inside here, there is oil. So they put oil inside. So now the fan pushes the oil against the other fan, and the oil will cause the other fan to turn. It will turn better than air, okay? So then you get a torque converter. But when the car is stopped, when you press the brake and the car is stopped here, then what happens is this part is stopped, this part is still turning. The engine is, when you're idling the engine is turning slower. So the force of the oil is not enough to overcome the resistance by the brakes. So it disconnected to the wheel, to the gearbox and to the wheels. And if you have the brakes on the wheels, that's enough to stop the wheel from turning. But the engine is turning slower, so there is less resistance. But if you, like in an ordinary automatic, if you lift off on the accelerator, you lift off on the brake, 3-2. But in an ordinary transmission, if you take your foot off the brake, then the car will start creeping forward, because whilst the engine is turning, there's still some oil moving, and when you take your foot off the brakes, it will start to move slowly. So that has the creeping function, yeah? But at all times, the two parts don't touch, okay? They don't touch, and so therefore, it can stop one side anytime that you want. Of course, nowadays in the new transmissions, they also have some kind of clutches that engage. Okay, this is not a true picture. What it does is it locks the two together. There's a mechanical lock, and when the car gears have engaged and all that, then it locks up, and that will also reduce the transmission loss. But normally in the, what you call this slush box, when you accelerate, there is always some slippage, because it takes time for the oil to build up the pressure, yeah? So there is a little bit of slip, and that's why automatic transmissions are known to be less fuel efficient. Okay, so that's about automatic transmissions. Now let's move on to the DSG or DCT. So here again we have the engine, and of course that's the fan of the engine. Then you have, in a DSG, there are two sets of gears. In fact, it's two gearboxes in one. So this is, say, 1, 3, and 5. So these are odd numbers, yeah? And then this is 2, 4, and 6. Okay, so some of them have a 7 gear here, but that's not important. So let's just take a 6-speed DSG. So on each of these set of gears, there is a clutch. So let's draw a clutch here, okay? And this clutch will engage, okay? It can move this way, and it will lock, and it's connected to the engine, okay? So there's a mechanism here, and it's quite smart. So in a DSG, when you are in one gear, let's say you are in gear number 1, the car will engage second gear, or rather the system will engage second gear, waiting for you. That is why when it's time to change to second gear, it just releases this clutch and engages this clutch. The gear is already engaged. So you have very quick gear changes. If you accelerate hard, the RPM will go up high before it changes. If you accelerate slow, it will change at a lower speed, engine speed. So now the trick is, when you're in second, or let's say you're in third, or when you're in second, okay, let's say you're in second, then what will happen is the car will predict that you're going to third next. Okay, so it will, whilst you are running in second, you will engage third and wait, but the clutch is not engaged, the gear is engaged, and then when it's time to change to third gear, it will just shift over, and the clutch here is engaged, this is released, and you're on third gear, and then you will pre-engage fourth gear. Now the trick is, when you are in fourth, then the car has to predict whether you're going to go to fifth or going to third. Okay, so how does the car predict this? So it's got some algorithm, some logic inside there, and basically it's based on acceleration or deceleration. Okay, when you accelerate, that means you're demanding for power, and then the gearbox will think you want to go to fourth gear next. So in third gear, you will engage fourth gear and wait for you. So if you're accelerating, yes, he is accelerating, he wants more power. So the little man inside there puts you in the fourth, and then when you get to the right RPM, this clutch will engage and you'll be in fourth gear. If you decelerate, for example, okay, so you are driving in third gear, and then what happens is you lift off, okay, and you start to brake. So there again, the gearbox will predict, hey, he is braking, so maybe he needs second, so it will engage second. So this is how the logic in the DSG works. So here's the tip: when you're driving the DSG, when you're accelerating, don't lift off, okay? Because then the gear change will be faster, and it's done in milliseconds. So the gear changes are so fast that it doesn't really matter that you don't lift off. The revs don't climb to kingdom come, okay? It just it just changes up so quickly. So it's so much fun, and that's why the DSG is so good for the power. Now, then after the gearbox, of course, it goes to the wheels, yeah? So this is without saying. So some of the DSG boxes encase this clutch housing and put in oil, okay? So that is called a wet clutch. And the oil does a bit of lubrication, it also gives a little bit of slip, and so the gear changes become even smoother. Now this is technically for cars that have more horsepower, yeah? Around 200 horsepower and above, they will have an oil, a wet type of clutch. For the smaller horsepower, they have another version. It is not encased in oil, it's just a housing, but it's empty, no oil inside, so it's made for lighter duty. So for the 1.4, 1.2 Golfs and Polos and Ventos, they have a dry clutch, and for the heavier duty Golf GTi, Golf R, they have a wet clutch. And say for 1.4 for the Tiguan, which is a heavier duty vehicle, that also has a wet clutch. So basically, guys, that is the difference between DSG, this DSG, versus the AT. Okay, the other thing is the AT has a automatic, has a torque converter. The DSG is actually not an automatic, it is actually a manual gearbox, because it's got the same clutches as in a manual gearbox, and it's got what you call an automated changing system, which is run by computers, yeah? So it's all done on software, and the gear changing is so fast, and you can of course use the pedal shifters, but the automatic gear changes are faster. But of course, when you're driving in the mountains and all, you don't want it to change because sometimes it cannot decide very well, especially if you are braking or accelerating and all. So there's a lot of things happening. So maybe that one you want to use manual for a bit better control, and of course it's more fun lah. Okay. All right, we're going to go into how to prolong the life of your DSG or DCT. They're all about the same. And since they're going to be here to stay, we have to learn how to use them properly. Same with automatic transmissions, you know, you also have to drive it properly. Like for example, for automatic transmissions, they never ask you to go into neutral at the traffic light, because if you do, and then when the light turns green, you shift into gear, you get this shift shock, okay? And so it's recommended that you actually leave it in gear. So that's one of the rules you have to learn when you're driving automatic. A lot of people don't know that, but if you don't know that, now you know, yeah? So for the DCT or DSG, there are three things you have to remember only, okay? Now remember, we said that it is a clutch transmission, it is a manual transmission, but with automated changing. Well, in slow moving traffic, you have a bit of a problem because it is like a manual gearbox, and because it is a manual gearbox, it has to disengage and engage the clutch when you are inching around in traffic. So the thing about inching around in traffic is it creates higher than normal wear and tear on your clutch, because the system is trying to decide you want to stop, so it has to release the clutch, yeah. And that is based on the braking. When you brake on a DCT, the first part of the braking actually disengages the clutch, and then when you lift off the brake, it starts to engage again. In traffic, when you are inching forward, the clutch will engage or disengage based on your foot on the brake. Because when you brake on a DSG, what happens is the first part of the braking also disengages the clutch. So when you're inching in traffic, basically you got your foot on the brake and you lift off, it starts moving, creeping forward, then you brake again and all that. So every time you do that, the clutch is actually engaging and disengaging, just like in a manual gearbox, and that creates some high wear and tear. So the best way to drive the DSG with a traffic jam is you stop. When you want to stop, you stop. Don't inch. So you wait for the car to move maybe 5 or 6 feet or 10 feet before you start moving again. You get up to him and you brake again. Okay, so that is how you can prolong the life of your clutch. Okay, it's the same as riding your clutch on a manual car. That will also shorten the life of the car. Okay, and then when you are accelerating, you just keep your foot on the throttle and it will change gears. If you have light throttle, it will change earlier. You have full throttle, it will change later. So the system called the mechatronics will decide on that. Okay, and the third thing you have to do is okay, when you're accelerating, you have to keep the throttle on, because then the system knows that you are wanting to change up, and it will get the next gear ready for you. Okay, so if you are lifting off and you shift up with your, say, the pedal shifter, then it will take a longer time, slightly longer time, yeah, for it to respond. So that's why you have to, your foot on the accelerator is the sensor for the car. Okay, and when you're decelerating, you use the brakes when you're decelerating, or tap on the brakes or lift off. This tells the computer that you are most likely wanting a downshift, so it will engage the lower gear ready for you. Okay, so these are the things you have to remember. You got to tell the computer what gear you're in, but after a while it becomes instinctive. Don't have to worry, you won't have to think about it, but just have to know what's going to happen and consciously know what you're going to do to preserve and also maximize the use of your DSG gearbox. Now, finally, on to wrap up, I like DSG because it equates to higher performance. Even the higher performance Porsches are running, they call it a PDK, but it's actually a dual clutch transmission, and so they don't have any problems. Maybe they make them bigger, yeah. But of course, it is an ongoing development, and as years go by, it gets better and better. And anyway, the first gearboxes came out in 2005, and I'm sure they were developed a few years before that. It's now 2020. Things change, things improve. Okay, so why do I like DSG? Because it is quick, it is very precise, there is no slip, so it's very highly efficient, yeah, and also it can be very economical if you want it to be. Alright guys, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like my Volkswagen collection. Yeah, thanks, bye bye.